Hello everyone, and welcome to a devlog to my first of its kind, third-person platformer virtual reality game. I've developed a unique camera and character controller from scratch for a traditional third-person platforming experience in virtual reality. Let's recap what we've implemented so far. Here's our character and the game world. When playing in virtual reality, you can run around, jump, and orbit just like in a traditional third-person platformer like Super Mario Odyssey, which is harder to visualize and works differently than you'd imagine in VR, but is not nearly as nauseating as one would imagine. Since you have the robot to lock your eyes onto as you orbit, your brain has that reference during that movement, which you don't have when doing a traditional smooth or snap turn in regular VR. Which is why I find this solution personally to actually be less nauseating than those options, as long as you do have your eyes locked onto the robot. I do plan on making it so that you can only orbit when the robot is roughly centrally in frame, but I haven't gotten around to it. It's worth noting a key distinction here is that you can't orbit up and down like you usually can, and the reason of that, maybe it's self-explanatory, but the experience of yawing the camera in VR is horrific, and unfortunately I had to find that out the hard way, but the solution that we landed on is surprisingly solid and fun. The distance that you get from the environment with this approach also helps with nausea, as that distance makes it more clear to your mind what you're looking at, and it helps with visual clarity, which I feel is especially crucial in this medium. So yeah, I guess we're caught up. If you like what you see, let me know, comment. Let's get into the new stuff. One of the first things that I added recently is a little visual flair to the eyes, adding a pupil to the character's eyes, which, with the opacity, looks interesting and adds a little personality and clarity when looking at the character indirectly. Next up, I had the idea to give our little character here arms. Right now he's a little too floaty. I mean, I like floaty, but it does feel a little empty. So I created a couple cylinder game objects and gave them a script I created, which takes in two game object locations, one on the hand and one on the shoulder, and repositions and stretches the cylinder to fill the gap between those objects. I didn't want a normal metal arm. I didn't think it'd be a good fit, especially with this implementation, and I wanted to build upon the energy, electric, whatever theme we've been developing with this guy's eyes and jumps and attacks, so I thought he could use a light energy beam arm. So I placed a modified version of the material I used for the eyes on the arms. I don't know what's happening here. Maybe it's magnets, light. It's supposed to look cool. What do you think? Does it? For a reason, in getting this model into Unity from Blender, our little robot here lost his chin. It's completely gone. He's got the ultimate weak chin, so let's give our little chopped friend here a little help. So we'll just create a thin cylinder here to fill the gap and apply the same metal material we use on his body. I really like how in Mario games, when that red guy runs around, I can never remember his name, he always kicks up a little dust trail behind him, and I think it'd fit our character very well. I mean, he's got this big old wheel, and it'll help tie our character into the environment. So we'll start by creating a new particle using Unity's particle system and selecting this cloud texture I got from a free asset and setting the particle up to emit the texture rapidly over time and to fade out each individual texture after a certain amount of time after being spawned, by setting the color over time to start as white and then become more transparent over time using this white to transparent gradient. We'll continue by creating a new script and attaching it to our character's parent object. This script will access our character controller to check if the character is moving and if the character is grounded, and then if those conditions are both true, then the particle will be active and emitting. Similarly to the dust trail, I think a ground pound type effect would be a good fit. That would activate after double jumping and landing on the ground. It'd give us some interaction between the character and the environment alongside some visual flair, but could also serve a gameplay functionality by visually showing the area that ground pounding affects, allowing for an impact interaction between our character and enemies or interactables. The next one I'm particularly excited about. One of the biggest things I've been looking forward to implementing is character animations. So far, our character animates by cleverly utilizing the headset's location data and mimicking it. The hands move one-to-one with controllers, head moves one-to-one with the headset. The robot's body moves with the headset, but it doesn't rotate with the headset. And the wheel moves with the headset, but only on the X and Z axes, but not with the Y, so it doesn't move up and down, and it also doesn't rotate. This solution really does bring the character to life and is very effective, but there are a couple areas that it leaves unaddressed. Specifically, player actions to control the character that are not done with the player's physical body, but with the input on the controller, like running with the left stick and jumping by pressing a button. So these actions could use some work. They seem stiff as it is right now, so let's address that. We'll start by creating a script and feeding it the game object for the character's upper body, and a variety of statuses for the character controller, like is the character grounded, what's his velocity, and keeping track of whether or not he's grounded in the previous frame using a variable called wasGrounded. And with this information, we can create a script to move the game object up and down when walking in a bobbing up and down movement. And we can make the body jut up temporarily preceding a jump and jut down temporarily after landing. Or more specifically, when the character controller is giving the script both a status of grounded and a status of moving, we can assume the player is walking and then modify the upper body game object's position to bob up and down. For the jump, we check if the character was grounded but is no longer so and has an upward velocity, and then tell it to jut upward. And finally, for the final scenario of landing, we check if in the previous frame we weren't grounded, but now we are. Then we jut downwards. Technically, I'd already implemented an effect for our character's double jump. However, it was only supposed to be temporary, and I don't really like how it looks, and it's also lacking a specific gameplay functionality that I have in mind. So let's revamp our double jump. What I had in mind for the double jump was a jetpack that shoots a beam down that can hit and damage enemies that are below the player on the ground. So the beam shoots down vertically from the robot's pack, and when it hits the ground, it'll have a similar spreading effect to the ground pound, so that in much the same way, it'll be clear what area is affected by the attack. Okay, so let's implement it. We'll need 3 effects, one coming from the robot's pack, one that shows the impact on the ground, and finally, the beam itself, which connects those two. I got these from heavily modifying a loop drop effect from a free asset, but these effects all use Unity's particle system and they're all relatively simple. Implementing the pack effect is also relatively simple. We'll just create a script to activate the effect as a child of the robot's pack and then disable it after a few moments. Then for the impact effect, we'll need the script to look below our player character and find the ground with a physics raycast and place the effect there for the game object's local Y positioning, while keeping everything else tied to the player character, as this effect is also a child game object of the pack. And finally, for the beam, we'll reuse the exact same code we used on the arms to connect the impact effect to the pack effect. Finally, when the double jump is activated, we enable these 3 effects for a moment, giving the impression of a burst of energy pushing the character off of the ground. Looking at the world we've created and the effects we've implemented today, I feel like we're kind of developing a floaty, almost aquatic visual theme that I want to expand on in the environment. I've got this cool wind trail effect that I've set up with a script to spawn procedurally around the character and throughout the world. Not much to say about it, I just think it looks neat and adds a little visual variability to the environment. That's all. Hope you enjoyed the video. Please let me know your thoughts. How are things looking? If you're working on something, I'd love to hear about it, and thank you so much for watching. Subscribe.